good morning, and welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is in relation to a segment that I did last week in the commemoration of the Emancipation Day celebration that took place last week in Washington, D.C. of the 1862 Emancipation Day Act that was signed into law by Abraham Lincoln that freed about 3,300 African slaves in Washington, D.C. And out of that segment, I also got a lot of responses from various people, who listen to this show all the time. And I thank you and I appreciate each one and every one of you. And in some of the responses, some were positive, negative, all that stuff, which I really appreciate that, because I like to hear from different angles, different point of view and all of that. But there was this particular comment that really caught my eye on this whole issue. And basically what the person was saying was that he was basically asking a question about the segment. Me talking about why America is the best place for African Americans and Black people and all of that stuff. And in that sense, basically the person posed a question that if I will feel the same way about Black people and African Americans in America as being the best place for Blacks and African Americans in 5 years' time. And I was wondering why that person had that comment in terms of 5 years' time, if I will feel the same way. And I beg to say this: I will feel the same way about Black people and African Americans living in America as the best place for African Americans and Black people in America 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30 years' time, 100 years' time from today. America will still be the best place for African Americans and Black people to live in and enjoy life and prosper economically than any part of the world today. And I still believe that 100 years from today, it will still be America for Black people and African Americans living in America. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if you look at the structure of the United States of America, I'm not going to talk about the past, 50 years ago past, talking about segregation and all that stuff, discrimination by the federal government, all that stuff. No, that is past, is gone. I'm talking about the current situation as we know it, where a lot of these things are now illegal. You don't have these federal sanctioned discrimination laws and acts by states and all that stuff. So now we're talking about a totally different era. So that's the era I'm talking about. I'm talking about this current era where these things don't exist, even though there are people who still discriminate, people who still are going to be racist and all that stuff. But I'm talking in terms of the federal government and state governments, not individuals. Individuals, you cannot stop somebody from hating somebody. They're always going to hate people regardless. That's their choice. You know what I'm saying? People are going to be prejudiced. That's their choice. But when it comes to the federal government and the state, that is what I'm talking about in terms of the socioeconomic system that it offers to its citizens that has changed drastically for the past 50, 60 years. That is what I'm talking about. And looking at America's democratic system as well as economic system, America is the only country on this earth that basically you can see that it opens up opportunities for different kinds of people, whether minorities, majorities, races, or whatever, to be able to use their God-given talent to advance and create things and become productive in this society. There's no country that offers that more than America because of the way the democratic and political as well as the economic system is in America. Now, right after I did that segment last week, the last week's Economist, magazine that came out also had a heading at the back cover of it the front cover of it, which said riding high. Riding high. Basically, the economists had a very serious analysis about the world economics. And what it said about the United States economy was that comparing America's economy, its GDP to the world in the 1990s, which was about 40% in the 1990s, comparably to the other G7 countries, France, Germany, England, and all of that, to today, which it has risen to almost 60%, 58% to almost 60%. That is pretty much what, 20% increment within the last 32 years of America's GDP growth comparably to the other G7 countries. That by itself alone tells you economically where America is and where America is going to be. Right around the 1990s, everybody thought with the collapse of the Soviet Union and most countries coming into the market economy system, that was going to pretty much open the doors for all these countries around the world, and that's going to basically shrink the size of the America's economy and its growth. I thought that so around that time. But if you look at America's economy today, and if you look at where America is economically today, there's no country that has a better economic output than the United States of America. There's no country that has a better economic output than the United States of America. I mean, for the past 100 years or so, America has been the most dominant economic country in the world, period. It started right around the early 1900s, around the First World War, when the British economy was the biggest economy in the world. And during that war, with the debt of England and having to pay all that debt to America, in terms of America financing them with that war, right after, towards the end of that war, America's economy surpassed that of England and became the biggest economy in the world and has never turned back up to this day. And if you look at all the shocks economically that the world have gone through, from the Great Depression in the 30s to the 70s oil shock and coming down to the 80s woes, as well as 2008 economic financial crisis and all that stuff, the only country that has always been able to come out of these economic woes have been the United States of America, and has come out successfully than any other country up to this day. Now, even quite recent, we talk about the COVID. Look at America's economy right now as we're speaking. Unemployment rate is what? 3.5%. The lowest unemployment rate in the world today is in America. It's America's economy. 3.5%. I mean, come on. 3.5% we are talking about. So if you're looking at all these factors and looking at where America is in terms of economically as well as politically, there's no way I have to have any doubt that in 100 years from now, 20 years or 50 years, 70 years or 100 years from now, anything is going to change in terms of the growth of the American economy, as well as the opportunities that minorities, especially African Americans and Black people, will still enjoy in this country based on the way the structure of this country is. I mean, I can understand people talking about China and the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. All those countries will be growing. Definitely all be growing. And you can see the growth of China for the past 30 years. And look at the growth of India and all of that. They are all going to grow. But there's one thing that those countries lack, which is culturally. Culturally, most of those countries economically and culturally, in terms of their socioeconomic development as well as their political structures and economic structures, are totally different from the United States and the Western cultures. And out of that, their growth will always hit a ceiling. Because if you look at the way economically, their systems are tied to government. You look at China's economy, it's tied to the government. China has a government-tied, capitalist system. So the government's role in the capitalist system is deep, very deep in their economies. And out of that, that thing does not help in terms of individual development and the freedom that the individual businesses need to keep growing the economy. They always have limits that they can go. And this is also tied to India as well. India also has the same problem because their economies are also tied to government. And as far as you have economies that are tied to government, to the hip, those economies will have a ceiling that they cannot move past those ceilings. And that is the problem China and India and most of these third world countries that are now growing are going to have, that America doesn't have. America's economy is not tied to government. It's tied to private investors and private development and creativity. That's what it is. The freedom of people to start businesses, freedom of people to be able to invest in any sector of the economy. That is what makes America great. And that is why America's economy will always be dominant in the world, period. Period. I don't care what anybody talking about where China is coming from and where India is going, all that stuff. Yes, they're going to grow. They will grow to some extent. Yes, they are going to get there. But because of the political and the socioeconomic systems that they have, their ceiling is always going to be capped at a certain point. Because the governments that they have will not open up their market system for the individuals in their countries to be able to develop that country to the level that America has been doing. America don't have that problem. Okay, America don't have that problem. I mean, look at it this way. America's economy right now is about 23 point something trillion dollars. Okay, 23 point something trillion dollars. Now, China's economy, which is the second biggest economy, is about 14, give and take 14 to 15 trillion dollars. I mean, we're talking about $8 trillion difference. GDP per capita of America is what? 63,000, almost 63,400 and something dollars. GDP per capita of China is just over $10,000. We talk about 6 times bigger than GDP per capita of the Chinese. And then India is way like around $6,000, about 10 times bigger. So if you look at all of that, and then you're looking at America's economy as right now, what else would make you think that 10 years, 50 years, 70 years, 100 years from now, the black man or the African American living in America is going to be better off somewhere else than the United States of America? I mean, give me a break. Think about it. It's not going to happen. This is the only place that can offer the African as well as the black American the economic successes that they can have in any country on this planet. And it's that simple. I mean, if you look at the analysis that I just gave you, I mean, even the poorest state in the United States of America, Mississippi. Mississippi's median income, okay? Mississippi's median income is over 50,000 US dollars. More than that of France, a G7 country. Now you go figure. Mississippi, the poorest country in America, its median income is about 50,000 US dollars. And it is more than that of France in Europe, a G7 country. So, I mean, if you look at it, all of that, and as economies do better, what does it do? It helps the people in that economies in that country. So by looking at the trend of the America's economy, it benefits everybody who lives in the United States of America. And if you look at the African American and the black people or that live in America, there's no better place that gives black people and African Americans the economic benefits and the social statuses in terms of economy as well as able to create and innovate and be part of this great economic system than any country in the world. I mean, there are other countries that black people who are there can also benefit from that, their economic status and all that stuff. I mean, you go to Europe, Germany, and all that stuff, yeah. But what I'm saying is that I'm talking about blacks and African Americans who live in the United States of America. And if you look at the economic outlook of the United States of America for the past 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and you're looking at where America is heading currently, based on the economic statistic data that we have, there's no doubt on my mind that 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, America will still be the best place for black people as well as African Americans or blacks from any part of the world that migrate to America to work steady and earn a living for themselves. I mean, there's no place I can phantom that can give you more than the United States of America. And it's clearly based on the data that I just talked about. I mean, you look at Europe, you look at Asia. Yes, the Asian economy, the BRICS, I mean, they're going to go where they're supposed to go. I mean, these are emerging economies, and they're going to be growing, as expected. By the end of the day, like I said, because of the socioeconomic and the political structures of these countries, they will always be capped at a certain point because their economies is too much tied with government, because the government have so much role in their economies, whereas America's economy is not like that. And because America's economy is not like that, it gives the citizens of this great American country the opportunity to come up with creativity. I mean, look, even if you look at R&D, research and development, in the past years, America is the only country that has higher R&D in their businesses than any country, including even Germany and China all combined. I mean, the way the American economic system is, the individual companies and individuals within this American economy have so much freeway to do things, to create. And out of that, it boosts the economic output of this country. And because of that economic system that America have, it is going to be very, very difficult for any of these emerging markets like China and India to be able to sustain that same level of growth. At some point, they're going to cap themselves. But the United States will always be the United States. Every projection that I've seen quite recently say that China's economy in the next 10 or 15 years will be bigger than the United States. Yes, it might be bigger in terms of numbers, but when you talk in terms of contribution to its citizens, it's still going to be lower than the United States. I mean, right now, China has the second biggest economy in the world. All right? But is Chinese citizens better off in China than in England or France or Germany? No. All right? The median income in Europe is way higher than that of China, even though China has the second biggest economy. I mean, these are facts. So even though they have the second biggest economy, in terms of does that size of their economy translate to the welfare, economical welfare of their citizens, comparably to a country like England or Germany or France, which is about third or fourth, fifth biggest economy in the world? No. So if you look at these BRICS countries, like I stated earlier, yes, they will get there, but because of the size of their population and because of the way the economic structures are, it's not going to be the same like the America and the Western European countries. I mean, I saw social media post when the BRICS currency, I think, is supposed to come out, or it came out last week or a couple of weeks ago, and people talking about the death of the dollar. And some people were talking about, the dollar is doomed, and because of I'm saying, my friends, fellows, give me a break. The dollar is not going nowhere. The dollar is still going to be the most dominant currency in the world. And let me be clear with you guys, fellows. America did not choose to have the dollar to be the most dominant currency. It was the world that bestowed that on the United States dollar. The world had traded in gold before. Like I stated earlier, when the British, First World War, when they were indebted to the United States, were paying the US in gold. They paid the United States in gold. At a certain point, the British didn't have enough gold to continue paying the United States. So they decided to pay the United States in dollars. That is what started making the dollar the most dominant currency in the world around that time, because the British had so many colonies around the world. So then the British government, having paid the United States so much in gold, decided they don't have enough gold to continue paying in gold. So they decided to pay in dollars. Now, the United States currently is the world's largest holder of gold in the world, which I think a lot of people wouldn't know. The United States have more gold than any country in this world. the largest holder of gold in the world is the United States of America. So the dollar was backed by the gold back in the 50s, 40s, 30s, 50s, until what? Richard Nixon became president. When Richard Nixon decided to take the gold and let the dollar float. And the dollar have been floating since the 1970s. So the United States, by its own assessment, they don't need the world to use the dollar, but it's the world that needs the US dollar because of stability. The world uses the United States dollar because of stability. Because right now we're talking, if I ask you, would you rather pay me in Chinese yuan or Indian rupees when I buy something from you, or when I'm paying you something? Would you rather receive that or the US dollar? You will tell me you want the US dollar. Why do you want the US dollar? Because the US dollar to you is more secure. You know, it's more secured, and it's more valuable than using the Chinese or the Indian currency. So out of that, that is what makes a lot of countries like to use the US dollar. But the United States is not asking countries to come and use US dollar to make America's economy better. America don't need that. As a matter of fact, if the United States dollar is not traded as the world's currency on the world market, it helps America's economy. It brings everything internal and helps America's economy more than the world economy. So this talk about is the dollar doomed and the dollar, I mean, it's so ridiculous. Look, the United States sells bonds, treasury bills, and all that stuff to various countries around the world. China is now the largest holder of US bills and bonds, followed by, I think, Japan, and then South Korea, Germany, and all the rest of the developed countries. Now, when these bills and bonds mature, what do you think the Chinese are going to get in return? They're going to get their money in dollars. Now, so do you think the Chinese want to see the dollar to go down or to devalue when they know that their investment in the United States economy is going to yield them profit in terms of dollars? So all these countries buy US bonds and bills because they believe in the American economic system. China buys American bills and bonds because it believes in America's economic system. America doesn't buy Chinese bonds and bills because America doesn't believe in anybody's economic system. And that is what it is. So, fellows, I'm going to end here by saying this. America's economy is still going to be the best economy for a long time. And African Americans and Black people will always benefit from that. So